We're going to paint this shell today. I've mixed up some colors from my tropical set. You can use the paints that you have at home and decide whether you want them to be pinks or purples. So I'm going to start with this corally color, and I'm going to paint where I'm actually doing each section basically one by one, sometimes leaving a little bit of white space in between each one of these areas in order to make it look like it has dimension. And remember that shells, when they're rounded, have a little highlight on them. So you can leave a little bit of white like I just did there in the middle. And you can also make these a little more tan. And it's okay that I went out of the lines because, as you know, I'm just going around one by one with the same exact color. So I'm going to move quickly, but you get the gist of that. Going to add a little bit of pigment while it's still wet back into here, just in a few places, to add a little texture and interest. Just dabbing some of that loaded brush or pigmented brush in there. And you can be very meticulous with this. I'm not going to do that, so that's definitely a preference and choice. I'll clear my brush off here. In some of my examples, I have a few different colors. I'm putting this kind of, it's a little on the yellow side, but you can always kind of make that a little more muted, and then we can go back over with that rusty tone. If I've got too much pigment here, I can always just transfer that or wipe it off onto my paper towel and kind of fill that in. And then I've got another pink up here and down here. I'm going to choose this rosier pink. You have your little strip here that you can kind of test that out. A little more bright pink. Might add a little bit of this brown into there. And take this brush cleared and come in here and just lightly go across some of these white areas. And what will happen is it'll still give a tonal value, but it will take some of the bright white of the paper away while leaving these nice little textural areas that have made shapes here. Now this one's still a little wet, so we'll wait on that. Now I think down here in my drawing I took another tone. I've sort of mixed these two together and added another layer, so I'll give you another color here, and just kind of making it a bit darker right here at the bottom and sort of flowing the paint up a little bit. And the great thing about shells is they have a lot of texture, so I made this kind of rusty color here. This is still pretty wet, so I'm just gonna kind of tap in a little bit of this rusty color. Not following every single line, especially that side was extra wet, so. And taking that same rust color, I've done some little polka dots, which you're welcome to practice on your little sheet here, because it's not going to turn out exactly like a circle, more like little triangles or teardrops depending on the shape of your brush that you have. And if you're dipping your brush in, you just want to be careful you don't have too much water on it so that the pigment can load at the top or tip of this brush and be able to be deposited in a pretty solid form. And it's okay if they bleed out a little bit. That makes it look cool, as long as you've got a variety going on to be a nice little contrast here. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and kind of combine with a clear brush some of those bright areas first. I've got a few in here. It's a little late to be doing that, so that'll be okay. Pretty much finished what I had in my example, but I just think today I want to just add these wispy little spots here that I think will make it have a little dimension, and it's more fun, and I can just keep painting. Sometimes you just don't want to quit painting. So that's pretty fun. And I might do a little bit of that here. Just kind of putting these wispy lines in, barely pressing down just to kind of get some texture in there, and then I'll go with something kind of darker here to get those lines in. I don't want them to look black. And you can, speaking of black, I've got this little black here and make it a very, very watered down shadow. And you can come in and kind of add a shadow, or you can come along here and add a bit of a shadow, not to the whole thing or it'll look funny. And if you get too strong of a line, you can just do like we did earlier and kind of just spread that out a little bit. And that will look nice. And of course, if this is dry, you could add some in here, but you might want to just use a darker version of a color than gray. And we don't want it to look too muddy. So come in here